David Berkowitz's confession and his infamous letters to the media were central to the Son of Sam case. These letters were not just admissions of guilt, but disturbing insights into the mind of a killer, offering a glimpse into his psyche and motivations. But as time went on, questions about the truthfulness of these letters arose. Were they the genuine ramblings of a delusional man, or was Berkowitz using them as a way to manipulate public perception? In this chapter, we will dive deep into the content of these letters, analyzing what they reveal about Berkowitz's mindset, his changing narrative, and the impact they had on his case and the public's understanding of him. The letters served as both a form of communication and an attempt at gaining control over the narrative surrounding his crimes. Through a detailed exploration of these documents, we begin to unravel the complicated relationship between Berkowitz, the media, and the public. The first of Berkowitz's letters, sent to the New York Post in 1976, was cryptic and unsettling. It was signed, Son of Sam, a name that would become synonymous with terror in New York City. The letter contained chilling details about the murders, as well as taunts directed at the police. The killer wrote, "I am the son of Sam. I am a monster. I am the son of Sam." At the time, the letters were an enigma. They provided little concrete information, but were filled with bizarre, rambling language. Berkowitz hinted at being driven by an external force, describing the voice of the demon Sam, who he claimed had been ordering him to kill. This notion of a demonic influence became central to the media's portrayal of Berkowitz and the Son of Sam mythos. For the public, the letters were both a source of fear and a twisted fascination. They became a tool for the media to feed the growing panic in New York City. Every new letter brought with it the possibility of revealing more about the killer's identity and motivations. The idea that the killer was using letters to communicate directly with the public elevated the sense of terror. The letters made it clear that the killer was watching, taunting, and in control of the narrative. As the letters continued, Berkowitz's claims about the voice of the demon Sam became more elaborate. He explained that the voice was coming through a dog owned by his neighbor, Sam Carr. In one letter, Berkowitz claimed, "I am the monster, the son of Sam. I am controlled by the voice of Sam, my neighbor's dog." The idea that a dog was communicating with him was strange and disturbing. Berkowitz described the dog as an agent of evil, telling him to kill. Psychologists have long debated whether this was a manifestation of Berkowitz's mental illness or a manipulation to garner attention and create a persona that would shield him from full accountability. Was he truly hearing voices, or was he inventing the story to excuse his actions and gain sympathy from the public? Berkowitz's claim of being controlled by a demon dog became the defining characteristic of his story. It separated him from other killers and added an element of supernatural terror to the case. The media latched onto this angle, creating an even more chilling narrative of a man who was being driven to kill by dark, external forces. It also allowed Berkowitz to distance himself from the murders, framing them as the result of forces beyond his control. As Berkowitz's case progressed and he was arrested, his narrative began to shift. In interviews with police and later in letters to the media, he went from claiming to be under the influence of a demon dog to expressing remorse for his actions and admitting full responsibility for his crimes. Berkowitz stated in one letter, "I did these things. I am guilty. I know that." But even as he confessed, his story continued to change. In later interviews, Berkowitz backpedaled from his earlier claims of demonic influence, admitting that he had fabricated the story to excuse his behavior. He spoke about how the voices had been the result of his own mental state, and how, over time, he came to recognize the extent of his own guilt. This shift in his story is critical to understanding Berkowitz's mindset. Did he fabricate the demonic influence as a defense mechanism, or did he genuinely believe that a voice was controlling him? His changing narrative suggests that Berkowitz may have been trying to reconcile his guilt with the story he had initially told the world. As time passed, his explanations became less about external forces and more about his own fractured state of mind. Psychologists studying Berkowitz have offered various interpretations. Some argue that his delusions about the dog were symptoms of his paranoia or schizophrenia, while others suggest that his manipulation of the media and his ability to weave such a complex story indicates a more calculating and narcissistic personality. His fluctuating story raises fundamental questions about the nature of his crimes. Was Berkowitz simply a man driven mad by his mind, or was he consciously crafting a persona to avoid taking full responsibility for his actions? The letters played a pivotal role in shaping the public's perception of Berkowitz. Each new letter ratcheted up the tension in New York City, creating an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. The killer was no longer just a faceless man committing murders. He was a figure who had inserted himself into the media narrative, taunting the police and the public alike. The media eagerly reported every new development in the case. Headlines read, "Son of Sam kills again," and "Son of Sam's letters reveal his mind." The letters were sensationalized, with every detail being picked apart for clues about the killer's identity. The media's portrayal of Berkowitz became a key part of the terror surrounding the case. He wasn't just a murderer, he was a character in a real-life horror story, and the media played an integral role in feeding that narrative. The letters also served as a form of psychological manipulation. Berkowitz was not just killing, he was engaging in a twisted game with the police and the public. His letters allowed him to control the conversation, to taunt the authorities, and to keep the city on edge. It is no surprise that the letters became such a significant part of the case. They were his way of asserting control over the narrative, ensuring that his crimes would not just be about the violence, but about the fear and fascination they caused. Years after his conviction, Berkowitz began to reflect on his letters and their role in his case. In interviews and letters from prison, he expressed regret for using the media as a tool to manipulate the public. He acknowledged that the letters were part of a strategy to deflect responsibility for his actions, and that they allowed him to maintain control over the narrative of his killings. But even as he expressed regret, Berkowitz's letters remained a testament to the power of media and manipulation in shaping public perception. The Son of Sam case would forever be remembered not just for the murders themselves, but for the way the media covered it and how Berkowitz used the media to fuel his own sense of power. His letters were not just a reflection of his crimes, they were part of a larger story about the intersection of crime, media, and fear. The letters Berkowitz wrote during his killing spree were central to both his case and his legacy. They became the focal point of the media's obsession with him, providing chilling glimpses into his disturbed mind. But as Berkowitz's story continued to evolve, so did the public's perception of him. Was he a man driven by delusions, or was he simply a killer hiding behind a mask of insanity? Even after decades, Berkowitz's letters continue to haunt us. They are a reminder of the fear he instilled in New York City and the manipulation he used to stay at the center of the media's attention. The Son of Sam case is not just about a killer's actions, but about the way those actions were framed, interpreted, and sensationalized. Berkowitz's letters may have been the first true evidence of the power of the media in shaping a killer's legacy, and they continue to raise questions about the relationship between crime, media, and the public's insatiable need for answers. David Berkowitz, the infamous Son of Sam, has spent decades behind bars, reflecting on his past actions and seeking to distance himself from the killer he once was. While his arrest and subsequent conviction for the brutal murders that terrorized New York City in the 1970s brought an end to his public reign of fear, his life in prison continued to draw media attention and public fascination. Over the years, Berkowitz's story has evolved from that of a psychotic killer to one of spiritual redemption, a transformation that raises important questions about the nature of punishment, the possibility of rehabilitation, and the role of media in shaping the narrative of a criminal's life. Berkowitz was sentenced to 6 consecutive 25-to-life terms for his murders, marking the beginning of a life behind bars that would last for the rest of his life. His time in prison, however, was not a quiet existence. While incarcerated, Berkowitz was forced to confront the full weight of his crimes. The brutal reality of the killings, the lives he had destroyed, the families he had traumatized was something he could no longer escape, even within the confines of his cell. In the early years of his imprisonment, Berkowitz did not speak much about his crimes. Like many prisoners, he kept to himself, trying to navigate the difficult life behind bars. He underwent various psychological evaluations, as required by the prison system, but his focus during these years seemed to be on survival, trying to cope with the immense guilt and public hatred directed toward him. However, it was clear that something was changing within him. As time passed, Berkowitz began to turn inward, reflecting on his actions and his life. This self-reflection would lead him to a significant personal transformation, a journey that would not only change him, but also shape his legacy. It was during these years that Berkowitz would begin to embrace religion, and eventually, Christianity. In the early 1980s, while serving his sentence at Attica Correctional Facility, Berkowitz underwent a dramatic spiritual transformation. He claimed that he found God through the intervention of other inmates who introduced him to Christianity. For Berkowitz, this religious conversion became a focal point of his life. He began to speak openly about his newfound faith, expressing deep remorse for his past actions. Berkowitz's conversion to Christianity marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one that would redefine his identity. He no longer saw himself as the son of Sam, the killer who had terrorized New York City. Instead, he adopted the moniker Son of Hope, a man seeking redemption through faith and forgiveness. In interviews, letters, and prison messages, Berkowitz began to explain how he had come to terms with his crimes through his relationship with God. He expressed regret for the lives he had taken and sought, in his words, to make amends for his actions. While many saw his religious transformation as a sign of genuine remorse, others were more skeptical. Was Berkowitz's faith truly a manifestation of his repentance, or was it a strategic move designed to win sympathy from the public and lighten the burden of guilt he carried? Critics pointed out that Berkowitz had never fully faced the victims' families in person, nor had he done anything beyond expressing his remorse to demonstrate his commitment to atonement. Despite the skepticism, Berkowitz's religious conversion marked a pivotal shift in his narrative. Over the years, he became an advocate for Christianity within the prison system, holding Bible studies and offering spiritual guidance to fellow inmates. His involvement in religious activities seemed to offer him some measure of peace, and for some, it appeared to signal a deep personal change. But for others, it was hard to ignore the possibility that this transformation was not as genuine as it seemed. Berkowitz's spiritual transformation inevitably became a point of public interest. After decades of being labeled a cold-blooded killer, he now presented himself as a man seeking redemption. His shift from the infamous Son of Sam to Son of Hope raised questions about whether a person like Berkowitz could ever truly change, or if his past would always define him. Some members of the public and the victim's family saw his conversion as genuine, believing that Berkowitz had taken full responsibility for his actions and was now trying to make amends in the only way he knew how. Others, however, remained unconvinced, questioning the timing and authenticity of his religious conversion. Was he truly remorseful, or was he simply using his newfound faith as a tool to manipulate public opinion and gain some measure of personal redemption? Berkowitz's story became a paradox, a man who had committed horrific crimes, but who now seemed to want to move away from that identity and embrace something more positive. The media's portrayal of him reflected this shifting narrative. He went from being a symbol of fear and terror to a figure who was seemingly trying to atone for his past, causing many people to reconsider their initial perceptions of him. But could a person like Berkowitz ever be fully forgiven? Could he ever be more than just the monster that had terrorized New York? While Berkowitz's attempts at redemption and his claims of remorse garnered attention, they did little to ease the pain of the families of his victims. For many, Berkowitz's religious conversion and expressions of regret felt hollow. They had lost loved ones to his senseless violence, and no amount of repentance could bring them back. His efforts to atone for his actions were, to them, insufficient compensation for the irreparable damage he had caused. Some families, particularly those who had been the most affected by Berkowitz's actions, chose to remain silent on the matter, unwilling to accept his attempts at redemption. They had lived with the trauma of his crimes for years, and to them, his story of personal growth felt like another chapter in a tale that they had no interest in continuing. For other families, however, Berkowitz's expressions of remorse were seen as a step toward healing. While they could never fully forgive him, they believed that acknowledging the depth of his crimes and seeking redemption was an important part of his responsibility. It was, for them, a small sign that he might be beginning to understand the magnitude of the pain he had caused. As Berkowitz lives out his life sentence in prison, his story continues to shape public discussions about crime, punishment, and redemption. His case serves as a profound example of the complexities of human nature, the struggle between evil and good, the possibility of change, and the power of media to shape narratives about criminals and their victims. The true crime genre, which exploded in popularity in the years following Berkowitz's crimes, continues to explore his case alongside those of other notorious criminals. His story, like many others, is not just about the murders he committed. It is about the broader questions of what makes someone capable of such violence, and whether redemption is possible for someone who has done such terrible things. Berkowitz's case serves as a reminder that even the most notorious criminals are not one-dimensional figures. They are shaped by their pasts, their choices, and the society that judges them. His story continues to evoke strong emotions. Some people see him as a man who is genuinely changed, while others see him as a man who will always be defined by his crimes. David Berkowitz's legacy is far from over. His journey from killer to man of faith, from son of Sam to son of hope, has left the public with lingering questions. Can someone who has committed such monstrous acts truly find redemption? Can a person ever be forgiven for crimes so heinous? And in the case of David Berkowitz, is the man he has become in prison the same person who committed those murders, or is he someone entirely different? In the next chapter, we will explore the final chapters of Berkowitz's life, looking at his ongoing spiritual journey and the impact of his case on modern criminal psychology. What does his story tell us about the possibility of change, and how does it challenge our understanding of crime, punishment, and redemption? Stay tuned for the next chapter in the saga of David Berkowitz, the son of Sam. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and drop a comment below. Thank you.